I thought you might like to know that you're talking to the orchestra here, and I'd like to read to you a little blurb that was in the Plain Dealer. That's our local newspaper. Green Energy Ohio has honored Cleveland and Cuyahoga County as Clean Energy Community of the Year in 2007 for their efforts in promoting sustainability and renewable energy. And I thought you might like to comment on that.
Congratulations. That's wonderful. I actually was in Oberlin yesterday, and you're going to have some competition down the road. The mayor of Oberlin is going to try to make Oberlin North America's first carbon-neutral community, which is very exciting. So that's the kind of competition I like to see.
Yeah, hi. I have 2 questions for you. First of all, I was just wondering if the United States, we keep up our gas prices even though it's just ridiculous at $4 a gallon. Do you think that would actually influence people in the United States to maybe change the way that they are driving and stuff like that to maybe perhaps move towards like the Europeans or everywhere else? And also, secondly, I'm wondering, what do you think of that new city that I think it's in the south called Greenberg or something like that? I watched something about it on TV. What do you think of them trying to redo their whole entire city in a more like green efficient way? Do you think that will be like an influence for the rest of the United States to follow that maybe in the future?
Well, with regard to your first question, we know the answer. Yes. Gasoline at $4 a gallon makes a huge difference in the way Americans behave. The auto industry in the last 3 years has shut down 65 assembly plants that were making trucks and SUVs. There has been a huge change in the composition of the vehicles that Americans buy. General Motors is getting ready to shut down the Hummer. So we know that at $4 a gallon, Americans buy different stuff. The problem is this. At $4 a gallon, you're sending roughly $3.50 a gallon profits to the Persian Gulf. If we had had several years ago a $2 a gallon gas tax, that would have had the same impact on people's buying habits, but the money would have stayed here and could have been used to cut your other taxes. So what we are doing right now is we are allowing the petrostates, Venezuela, Nigeria, the states in the Persian Gulf, and Russia. We are allowing the petrostates to levy a $3 a gallon gasoline tax on American consumers. We would be much smarter to levy that same tax on ourselves, and the world would frankly be a much safer place. With regard to the community you mentioned, I don't know anything about it in particular. I am a complete believer in the power of example. American cities will follow other American cities. American city councils will follow other American city councils. People don't like to be second. Americans like to be first. So if we can get a good competition going, I think people will imitate it in spades. We launched a program called Cool Cities about 3 years ago. We had some goals for how many cities we would sign up. We far exceeded our goals. We signed up 700 cities in the first 2 years. The goal was 100. Then the people who are the county executives of the big urban counties came to us and says, "What's wrong with counties? We want a program for ourselves." And they created a Cool Counties program. So yes, I think people will copy. Sorry.
Hi. I wanted to first congratulate and applaud you guys for running the anti-coal campaign. I think it's a really great and really important part of all the work that's being done. But I wanted to ask how, at the same time, the Sierra Club can have a credit card that's funded and sponsored through Bank of America, which is one of the biggest funders of all of the coal industry.
Well, we are actually working with all the banks to try to encourage them not to fund coal. If you have a credit card, it almost certainly comes from a bank that is involved in lending in something you don't approve of. The reality is banks are very large institutions, and they do lots of good things and lots of bad things. We are going to be working with the Bank of America to try to persuade them not to do that. And if a truly wonderful, virtuous major American bank emerges in the next decade, we'll definitely look forward to partnering with them. But So far, I haven't found one, so.
About a year to 2 years ago in Texas, a major utility wanted to build something like 10 or 12 new power plants. The environmental community was able to negotiate an interesting resolution to that problem, which resulted in a vast reduction in the number of coal-fired power plants that were to be constructed. Is there a model there, or was that a unique situation? Is there something that can be built on as far as the expansion of existing and new coal-fired power plants in this country?
Well, our view is that we should not be building any new pulverized coal-fired power plants because we do not know how to sequester their carbon dioxide emissions. We don't believe we need them. We believe we have, and we have studies that we've commissioned from government laboratories which show that at least between now and 2030, the United States can meet all of its energy needs with a combination of efficiency and renewables while retiring a significant part of its existing coal capacity and not adding any new coal capacity. After 2030, we're going to need some new technology. But the Texas example was fairly early. That was one of the earliest cases where a utility backed off. Frankly, at the moment, the coal rush is on hold. We have blocked in the last year 65 coal-fired power plants. There were about 150 on the drawing boards 2 years ago. 65 of them are no longer on the drawing boards. About a half dozen are under construction, ones that were pretty far along the road when we undertook our coal campaign. We just had a huge battle in the state of Kansas. Kansas is not considered to be a terribly quote-unquote green state. It's certainly not a Democratic state. It's certainly not a liberal state. In Kansas, they were proposing to build a huge coal-fired power plant. When they originally began the project, the governor of Kansas, Governor Sebelius, was in favor of the plant. We did an educational campaign in Kansas to tell people in Kansas what the plant would really mean. By the end of the educational campaign, the governor had come out against the plant, the public health commissioner had rejected the plant, and that plant will not be built. So you have about a half dozen American states which have already now said effectively, you can't build coal in our state. And I think we'll get that number to 50 in the next 2 or 3 years. So I think we're going to win the coal battle because I think as Americans see that states like Idaho, Kansas, New Mexico, Oregon, California, that have said absolutely no to new coal, the lights don't go off. The bills don't go up. The air gets cleaner. People like it. I think that's where we're headed. That doesn't mean that we won't lose a few battles. We will. We can lose a few battles. We just can't lose too many. The atmosphere can handle a certain amount of CO2. It just can't handle too much. Do everything in moderation.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to Carl Pope, Executive Director of the Sierra Club. We want to thank Carl Pope very much for being with us. We want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and this forum is now adjourned.